Half an acre is more than enough land to feed a family for life. I know that sounds crazy. Most people will tell you that you need 5 acres, 10 acres, even 20 before you can grow real food independence. They're wrong, and the proof has been hiding in plain sight for over 2,000 years. There's a forgotten permaculture method used by farmers long before fertilizer companies and seed corporations existed that stacks food production in layers. Trees feeding shrubs, shrubs feeding ground crops feeding the soil, and the soil feeding everything all over again. It runs itself. It needs almost no inputs, and it produces more food per square foot than any monoculture garden ever will. By the end of this video, you'll know exactly how to turn half an acre, or even less, into a self-feeding food forest using the same layered system our great-grandparents quietly relied on before modern agriculture buried it. Let's get into it. Let's be honest about what most backyard food growing actually looks like. You till up a patch of grass, you buy seeds, soil amendments, and maybe a few fruit trees from the big box store. You spend $300, $400, sometimes over $1,000 before you've grown a single tomato. Then the work starts. You water every other day, you weed on weekends, you fight pests with sprays that cost $20 a bottle. You haul in mulch, compost, and fertilizer year after year. By the end of the season, you've put in 200 hours of labor, and you're lucky if your harvest covers what you spent. And next spring, you start over from zero. This is the trap. The mainstream gardening model is built on annual crops, constant inputs, and your unpaid labor. It's designed to keep you buying. Seed companies sell you new packets every year. Fertilizer companies sell you bags every spring. Garden centers sell you replacement plants every fall. You're not growing food independence. You're running a small, expensive hobby that the industry quietly profits from. Meanwhile, you're working harder, spending more, and getting less than the farmers who fed entire villages off less land than you have right now. Something is deeply wrong with the model, and the fix isn't more effort, it's a completely different system. Here's what almost nobody talks about. 2,000 years ago, in the hills of Morocco, farmers were growing food forests on tiny plots of land that still produce harvests today. The same plots, the same trees, generation after generation, feeding family after family, with almost no outside inputs. In the Amazon, indigenous communities built terra preta food systems that fed entire civilizations on land smaller than a modern suburban lot. In Vietnam, family gardens layered fruit trees, shrubs, vines, and root crops into spaces no bigger than a parking space, and they fed multiple generations under one roof. This wasn't luck, it was a method, a precise, layered, self-feeding system that mimics the way a natural forest grows. Then commercial agriculture arrived. Big seed companies didn't want you growing perennials that produce for 30 years without buying anything. Fertilizer companies didn't want you building soil that feeds itself. Equipment manufacturers needed you tilling, spraying, and replanting every single season, because that's where the money is. So they pushed monoculture, rows of one crop, bare soil between them, annual replanting, constant inputs. They called it modern, they called it efficient, and they quietly buried 5,000 years of food forest knowledge under a marketing campaign. But that knowledge never died. It survived in old farming books, in family traditions, in countries the corporations couldn't fully reach. And today, on half an acre, you can bring it back. Before I show you the 7 layers that make this whole system run itself, hit that subscribe button and ring the bell. I drop forgotten homesteading methods every day, and you don't want to miss what's coming next. The canopy layer, your tall fruit and nut trees. The first layer is your tallest trees, and this is where most people mess up before they even start. The canopy layer is your long-term food anchor. We're talking chestnuts, walnuts, pecans, full-size apple trees, mulberries, persimmons. These are the giants that will feed you, your kids, and your grandkids for 50 to 100 years. Here's why it works. Tall trees catch the most sunlight, drop leaves that build soil for everything below them, and pull deep minerals up from 20 feet underground that no annual vegetable can reach. One mature chestnut tree can produce over 100 pounds of nuts per year. That's protein, real storable protein, with zero replanting. On my own half-acre, I planted 3 chestnuts and 2 mulberries the first year. People laughed. They said I was wasting space. 6 years later, those mulberries alone feed my flock of chickens for 2 months straight, and I haven't bought summer feed since. Plant your canopy trees first and space them 30 feet apart on the north side of your property so they don't shade out the rest of your layers. Use semi-dwarf varieties if you're tight on space. They produce in 5 years instead of 15. But the canopy is just the ceiling of this system. The next layer is where the real magic stacks up. Underneath your giants, you stack the subcanopy. This is your peaches, plums, cherries, dwarf apples, and semi-dwarf pears. They grow 10 to 20 feet tall, fitting neatly under the spread of the big trees without competing for light. And here's the secret nobody tells you. They actually produce more fruit when planted in this layered system than alone in a bare orchard. Why? Because the canopy above them blocks late frosts that wipe out blossoms. The deeper roots of the big trees pull up water during droughts, and some of that moisture leaks back into the topsoil where the subcanopy roots feed. It's called the nurse effect, and old farmers used it on purpose for centuries. A single dwarf peach tree can give you 50 pounds of fruit per year. 5 of them tucked between your canopy giants, and you've got 250 pounds of fresh fruit, plus enough to can, dehydrate, or feed back to your animals as supplemental nutrition. Plant your subcanopy 15 feet apart in the gaps between your tall trees. Use them as living fences along property lines or as borders between zones. Mulch heavily the first year with wood chips. After that, the falling leaves from the trees above will mulch them automatically forever. The shrub layer, berry bushes and productive hedges. The shrub layer is your weekly grocery run growing on autopilot. Blueberries, raspberries, blackberries, currants, gooseberries, elderberries, hazelnuts, sea buckthorn. These plants stay between 3 and 10 feet tall, and they pump out food from late spring all the way through first frost. Here's the math that should blow your mind. A mature blueberry bush produces 10 to 15 pounds of berries per year. At grocery store prices, that's $80 of berries from one plant. Plant 10 of them, and you've got $800 of fruit every single year without lifting a finger after the first season. The shrub layer also does something the canopy can't. It creates a wall of habitat for beneficial insects, birds, and pollinators that protect your entire food forest from pests for free. No sprays, no traps. Nature handles it. Plant your shrubs 3 to 6 feet apart in the gaps between your subcanopy trees. Use them as living fences along property lines or as borders between zones. Mulch heavily the first year with wood chips. After that, the falling leaves from the trees above will mulch them automatically forever. But the subcanopy still leaves gaps at ground level, and that's exactly where the next layer slides in to lock everything together. Now we get into the layer that most modern gardeners completely skip. The herbaceous layer is everything that grows soft-stemmed and dies back to the ground each winter but comes back stronger every spring. Perennial kale, sorrel, asparagus, rhubarb, comfrey, lovage, chives, oregano, mint, sage, lemon balm, yarrow, Echinacea. These plants do 3 jobs at once. They feed you, they feed your animals, and they feed the soil. Comfrey, for example, sends roots 10 feet down and pulls up minerals that get locked in its leaves. You cut those leaves 3 times a season, drop them as mulch around your fruit trees, and you've just delivered free fertilizer that would cost you $40 a bag at the garden center. Old European farmers called comfrey the fertilizer plant for a reason. Yarrow attracts predator insects that wipe out aphids before they touch your fruit. Mint repels rodents from your tree trunks. Echinacea boosts your immune system and your chickens' immune systems if you let them peck the dried leaves. Plant your herbaceous layer in clusters of 5 to 7 plants around the base of every tree. Keep aggressive spreaders like mint contained in old buckets sunk into the soil so they don't take over. This layer fills the visible ground space, but underneath it, an even bigger food source is quietly working. The root layer, underground calorie stores. Below the soil surface, you've got real estate that almost nobody is using. The root layer is your hidden pantry. Jerusalem artichokes, ground nuts, yacon, perennial onions, garlic, horseradish, skirret, sweet potatoes in warmer zones. These crops produce massive calorie loads in space that's otherwise wasted. A single Jerusalem artichoke patch, 20 square feet, will give you over 100 pounds of tubers per year. They taste like a cross between a potato and a sunflower seed, and they store in the ground all winter. Just dig them when you need them. No canning, no freezing, no work. Native peoples in North America fed entire tribes through harsh winters using groundnuts and Jerusalem artichokes long before potatoes ever crossed the ocean. This wasn't survival food, this was staple food. Plant your root layer in the spaces between your shrubs, in deep, loose soil. Mulch with 6 inches of straw or wood chips. Once they're established, you'll be digging fresh roots 3 seasons a year for the next 20 years without ever replanting. Here's the trick most people miss. Don't harvest more than 70% of any root patch in a single year. Leave the rest to multiply. Do that, and your root layer expands itself every season forever. The next layer goes vertical, and it might be the most underused space on your entire property. The vertical layer, climbing food and living trellises. Look up. Most of your food forest's vertical space is empty. The vertical layer is climbing food, hardy kiwi, grapes, passion fruit, climbing beans, Malabar spinach, hops, perennial cucumbers, scarlet runner beans. These plants don't take ground space. They use your trees, fences, and structures as living trellises. A mature hardy kiwi vine can produce 100 pounds of fruit per year, climbing right up the trunk of one of your subcanopy trees. The kiwi doesn't hurt the tree. It uses the existing structure, gets sunlight at the top, and drops leaves that mulch the tree's roots. This is stacking at its finest. 2 crops, 1 footprint. Grapes climb fences and arbors. Beans climb sunflower stalks and corn stalks. Hops climb anything you give them and produce a harvest that home brewers will pay you $40 a pound fresh. Plant your vines at the base of trees that are at least 4 years old so the trunks can handle the weight. For grapes and kiwis, train them along south-facing fences where they'll get maximum sun and ripen sweeter fruit. The vertical layer is what turns half an acre into the productive equivalent of 2 acres of flat ground. You're farming 3 dimensions instead of 1. But there's still one more layer, and it's the one that makes everything else work. The ground cover and fungal layer, the living floor. The 7th and final layer is what separates a real food forest from just a bunch of plants in the ground. Ground cover and fungi are the floor of the system, strawberries, creeping thyme, white clover, wild ginger, wood sorrel, alpine strawberries, and underneath them all, mycorrhizal fungi, oyster mushrooms, wine caps, and shiitake on inoculated logs. The ground cover does what bare soil never can. It blocks weeds without herbicides. It holds moisture so you water less. It feeds bees and pollinators. And in the case of clover, it pulls nitrogen out of the air and delivers it to your trees as free fertilizer. The fungal layer is the secret weapon. Mycorrhizal fungi connect every plant in your food forest into one underground network. They share water, nutrients, and even immune signals between plants. A food forest with healthy fungi outproduces one without by 30 to 50%. That's not a guess, that's lab-measured science. Sprinkle wine cap mushroom spawn into your wood chip mulch the first spring. Within 12 months, you'll be harvesting pounds of gourmet mushrooms while your trees grow stronger. Plant strawberries and clover everywhere you can see bare dirt. Within 2 years, your food forest floor will be a living carpet it feeds itself. That's 7 layers, all working together, all on half an acre or less. I want to tell you something I haven't shared on this channel before. When I first heard about the 7-layer food forest method, I thought it was nonsense. I'd been gardening the conventional way for years, raised beds, annual crops, fertilizer schedules, the whole routine. The idea that I could just plant a bunch of trees and shrubs together and walk away sounded like lazy gardener wishful thinking. So I tested it. I marked off a quarter of my half acre, the worst section full of clay, weeds, and a slooped patch that nothing wanted to grow on. If the method failed, at least I hadn't ruined my good soil. I planted 2 mulberries, 3 dwarf peaches, 8 blueberry bushes, a row of hazelnuts, comfrey at the base of every tree, Jerusalem artichokes along the slope, hardy kiwi up the fence, and a clover and strawberry ground cover throughout. The first year, honestly, it looked like a mess. I almost ripped it out twice. The second year, the comfrey exploded and started feeding the trees. The clover filled in. The mulberries hit 5 feet tall. By year 3, I picked 30 pounds of blueberries off those bushes. The peaches gave me my first real harvest. The Jerusalem artichokes had multiplied into a patch I couldn't dig fast enough. By year 5, that quarter acre was outproducing the rest of my conventional garden on a fraction of the work and 0 fertilizer purchases. I tore out the raised beds the following spring. I haven't looked back since. Picture your property 5 years from now. You walk outside on a Saturday morning with a basket. You pick blueberries from the shrub layer, peaches from the subcanopy, a handful of strawberries from the ground cover, and dig 2 pounds of Jerusalem artichokes for dinner. You haven't bought fertilizer in 3 years. You haven't watered in weeks because the mulch and ground cover hold every drop of rain. Your grocery bill drops by hundreds of dollars a month. Your food is fresher than anything money can buy, and the system gets stronger every single year instead of weaker. That's the long game of the food forest method. You build it once, it feeds you forever. And if you're watching this and thinking, I want to apply this food forest method, but I don't know where to start with my actual property, I put together a complete layout guide that shows you how to zone your land so every system feeds the next one. It covers the exact rotation methods, the perennial feed crops, and a 30-day plan to get it all connected. It's free. Links in the description. This isn't gardening. This is food independence, and half an acre is more than enough land to build it. Now I want to hear from you. How much land are you working with right now? And which of these 7 layers are you most excited to start with? Drop it in the comments below. I read every single one, and I'll be answering questions all week. If this video opened your eyes to what's possible on a small piece of land, hit that subscribe button and ring the bell. Next week, I'm breaking down the exact perennial feed crops that cut your livestock feed bill in half, and you do not want to miss it. Half an acre is enough. The method has always been there. The corporations just hoped you'd forget. Go plant your food forest.